of the cabinet, always supportive of us, always checking to make sure we're okay, always willing to step in and give us counsel. So he is the tough man on crime, but he's also an excellent, excellent mentor to so many of us. And so it gives me so much pleasure this morning to have our Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Horace Chang, come to you this morning to tell you about what's going on in our fight against crime and our journey towards peace. Please welcome him.
Thank you, my colleague, Minister Morris Dixon, who handles these press briefing for us, for the government. She has gone through the protocol again, but then we recognize, of course, with us this morning, Deputy Commissioner Warren Clark, and of course, from the Ministry of Education, a full team. Oh yes, Dr. Kassan Chupwa, Permanent Secretary. Good to have you here, and other members of the team. I understand the university delegation will be here in a little while from what was said. I haven't seen them yet, but we welcome all the cross-section of government workers and the press, the media, and other members of the set that have joined us this morning for discussion. It is the minister in opening, of course, referred to some activities in legislative activities in the Senate and referred to the jury and the justice system. And the justice system, well, it should already mention it, what we deal with, the criminal justice system. The police is, of course, the front line of the public interface with the criminal justice system. But a strong and effective criminal justice system is a critical pillar for development in the country. You start there by providing safety. Safety in all phases of society. Of course, it changes today as we get into the digital age, but the question of personal security still remains critical, whether in the social media or in the difficult communities. And what we have been discussing as a country over the years, the challenges many face in our, as we use the term, challenged communities, where you have gang activities literally taking charge of communities. Usually these communities are also characterized by other dysfunctional activity. You have not necessarily, well, poverty is not the cause of crime, and I'm not one to advocate that. We have had many tough communities where you have good order and some brilliant people coming out of it, but in fact they tend to be associated. And it was the mission of the government to stop the violence, whether in the community, on the streets, and unfortunately sometimes in our schools. But the object of the policy of the government is to ensure we can create good order across the country. Once we have that, it provides the basis for development. It provides a foundation of economic change. If you go to the school, I'm not going to emphasize that too much, but if you have disorder in a school, the learning capacity declines. If you have criminal violence active in the community, then not only do the community get fearful and stay home, but a lot of economic activity goes down. As a society, we're fully aware of social activity that drives the economy, entertainment, but other basic social activity in Jamaica. The Wednesday evening prayer meeting is a staple for older, in particular ladies, who are, in the churches. They want to go out, and it's a part of their social life, not just their activity in a faith-based organization, a church. When the gun starts firing, they're afraid to leave their home because they get caught in gunfire in the streets. It may not be they want to be encouraged, but on a Friday evening across Jamaica, on a Saturday evening, men get together at a street-side bar. They drink and talk, and they solve all the Jamaica's problems by midnight and go home after some JB. But it's part of what protects the social fabric of Jamaica. Everybody comes together, play a game of domino, talk and discuss. That's the kind of activity that we have to ensure continues. Those are, in fact, in my view, they are rights of Jamaican people. When you disrupt that, other things begin to happen that is reflective of social dysfunction. So it's important that we, as a government, ensures that we can protect, not just protect our citizens, but provide an environment in which there is good order, and allow our citizens to move around, socialize, and for economic activity to continue. It's critical. And it's not only the entertainment, which generates a lot of income, but you'll have big business, large population area, whether it's a supermarket or a manufacturing activity. You find it is important to take, in certain kind of jobs, take the job near to the community. And that means there has to be safety. If you wish to do a labor-intensive activity, you don't want to move it to a community, a spot that is 10 miles from your community, so you have to take transport and move around. You want to get where the people live, and ultimately to do it, you have to have peace and good order in those communities. So that is the essential core of our commitment and the work of the government in the area of security. Of course, we expand our scope. Beside, the government takes a keen interest in looking at how we can strengthen our justice system, because justice is the next step. But we also do work in the correction service, that those who actually breach the law, when they get to us, we don't just throw them in a cell and leave them there. We try to ensure they can be reformed and rehabilitated and reintegrated in the community. And we have been having some success there. That is the nature of the broad work. And before we even get them breaching laws, the law and creating disorder, we are pursuing what is termed more social investments, as we work collaboratively with various agencies to impact the vulnerable in our difficult communities. We work very closely with the Ministry of Education in several areas. We collaborate with the Ministry of Health. We collaborate with the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. So the Ministry of National Security and the staff, including the police, is a primary interface with the public, and especially with the vulnerable public. The police officer in the community is not only a police officer. You see, move around the new uniform, which everybody tells me looks good. In fact, they tell me that when the ladies go to court, they distract the judge. So that is part of what happened. But we have officers who get to know the community in the Community Security Service branch, and they know very much where the vulnerable family lives. And that is ultimately what we must do. We have to protect the individual. Safety in the community is not just about the community, it's about the individual. The single mother who have lost her other family support, she moved to Kingston to get a job, she lose the job, she end up in a corner, she has no rent, she's literally in desperate situation. She gets pregnant for some gentleman who leaves her, and the child is in difficult situation. If they grow up to 12, 14, they start working with the gangs, the police knows them. And sometimes where they live, only the police will go there. So the police plays a role in ensuring we can access the truants. Those who are not going to school, they're 9, 10. We have to work with the Ministry of Education, and then we bring them together that we can get them some social support. We have what I'd like to call a social safety net. It's not as organized and as funded as the American Social Security activity, where they pay them huge funds. But between PATH and a number of other activities, there's a pretty good network of activity we can use to assist these families, and the government is expanding them, and we can use this access to the community to find the right people is heavily dependent on having social workers who can reach them, and the police is critical to that. So this morning, as I gave prior to 3 times yesterday, I think I'd rather have you ask the questions you find that was half answered, and the ones that you want to think I avoided because they're too sensitive. But again, good morning, and it's good to hear. I think our students from university walked in, Miss Minister. All right? Welcome, and others who joined us. So I'm open to questioning now, Minister.
Thank you, DPM. And just noting, he didn't tell you, and I'll tell you, murders are down 27.4%, shootings are down 35.1%, and robbery down 21.6%. And this is based on year. Remember last year we had dramatic reductions in crime. And so this is a continuing trend. It is sustainable. The minister has been working hard. The members of the JCF have been working hard. The ministry team have been working hard. And we want to commend you on all of that hard work. I just needed to note DPM, who is here. We have the UTEC Students Union reps here. The UE reps are still on their way. We need to teach them. They need to be on time. Also with us today, we do have some members of the Ministry of Education team. I had acknowledged the Permanent Secretary and the Chief Education Officer. We also have Richard Troop, our Director of Safety and Security. We also have Tamika McGrath, Senior Guidance and Counseling Officer for Region 1. We also have Anna K. Watson, Senior Officer, Health and Family Life. And you heard the Deputy Prime Minister say to you that he works very closely with the Ministry of Education in terms of addressing some of the concerns we do have in our schools. And in terms of the Ministry of National Security and Peace, they also have with them Dr. Aubrey Stewart is here, and we also have Charnel Henry, the Director of Communications, and we do have Superintendent Michael Lawrence also here. And everybody who is here can take questions. All right. So let's open up for the questions.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mahiri Stewart, Nationwide News here. Question to, I guess, the Ministry of Education and Minister Chang. So yesterday on Nationwide 90 FM in one of our programs, we were discussing the violent incidents that have been taking place in schools that have been reported on this week. And one aspect of it we were speaking about specifically was the fact that the old days of telling another student, I'm going to tell on you, when something bad happens between them, seems to be lost, and they seem to be taking matters into their own hands as opposed to reporting incidents to persons in authority. So the question to the Ministry of Education would be, what needs to be done more to bridge that gap between the student and the teacher or the parent in terms of being able to tell and confide in somebody when they're being bullied? And to Minister Chang, the same question would be, what needs to be done to bridge that gap between students and members of law enforcement when they feel like they need to bring a matter to their attention?
All right. Well, I guess since you started with education, I'll start, and if anyone from the team, the PS or the CEO or Dr. or Mr. Troop, the other Troop, if either of you want to answer also, you can after DPM. But just noting, there's a lot of work that happens in our schools, especially in terms of guidance, counseling, and dealing with the psychosocial issues affecting our children. One of the things that I always try to point out is that our children are really products of the communities that they are from, the homes that they are from, and that we are seeing in our schools a lot of the realities that we see in our communities. The schools are not distant from the communities within which they are delivering education services. And so we are finding that the same issues we see in our communities, the same issues with conflict resolution, they're popping up in school because it is learned behavior. And so what we've had to be doing in the Ministry of Education is putting a lot more emphasis on that work on the psychosocial dimension. We're doing a lot of work in literacy and numeracy, but we've recognized that that alone is not enough. And so we have Mr. Troop and his team doing a lot of work. We have the guidance counselors out there working with the students. We've provided avenues for them to speak up when there are issues. But we have to keep doing it. Some of the young men who've been involved in some of the activities that have been in the news, they're not from underprivileged families. So this is a problem that is happening across our country. and we have to deal with it. And it's a general problem where we have accepted violence as the way to deal with conflicts. I know for me, I have DPM in our schools. We had an incident at one of our high schools in St. Anne, and you would have all heard about it, Ocho Rios High School. But the day before was Peace Day, where there was a lot of work done in that school. And then the day of the incident, the JCF team was there, working with our students. So we know we have to do more. We're going to have to do more, but there's a lot that's been put in place. But the work that DPM is doing on peace, that element of the Ministry of National Security and peace, is very important, because we're going to have to do a lot of work in our communities and with our families, because again, the school is just a reflection of what's happening in our society. DPM.
Thank you, Minister. You've covered most, but just add one, just remind the members here in the audience, the government established a violence commission last year under Dr. Sam Vaughan, with some of our distinguished professionals to look at the issue of violence, because what's said by the minister is that Jamaica has reached a stage where we have normalized aspect of violence. And indeed, we saw the murder rate going to 60 per 100,000, and there are people debated the need for a state of public emergency, when the United Nations itself defines civil war at 36 per 100,000. Okay, and we are going way beyond that, and there are individuals arguing as to what we should do. We literally accept it and do some palliative activity. So the same thing has happened across society, where a lot of individuals see violence as a solution to a debate, and at all stages, so young and old. And while we have had to focus heavily and decidedly so to reduce gang violence, it's public safety and public order, and reduce it, we have to now focus on how we can get the cultural change within our community. And that's where the peace dividend comes. We are working at it. It's not going to be easy, but we are where we have a lot of work to do. The other aspect, not a distraction, but the reality of modern life, of course, is social media. And social media is the latest form of, documented communication. That was a real revolution in civilization, the creation of the printing press, which is thousands of years ago, when human beings could document their experience, changes, put it somewhere you can get it from, into a big book, library, onwards into computer, and now social media. So some other things we see quickly, and what can determine how we think, are maybe the minority issues, because what goes viral, and that's something normal. Even good things, it has to be extremely good. So if someone comes and runs as fast as Usain Bolt, it will go viral. But you get a Jamaican winning gold medal all over the place, but they are still not reached to the level of Usain Bolt, and we take it for granted. That's just I don't know, it's maybe a good feature of Jamaica. Our expectations from our people are extremely high in whatever we do. So we have to realize some of the things we see out there is not as widespread as the image, but that's what gets put out there. We're not ignoring it. We have a whole formation of police officers we call school resource officers, which we intend to expand. They're specially trained, and they go into the schools and assist in terms of disciplinary matters and working with the guidance council, not just to provide an ear, but as I said, to identify the problems and work with case managers, which we have as part of our system, to solve the problem with the family. And that is something we're going to scale up and expand on, working closely with our education in the community, because we have to get in there. It's a major problem, and as you get murdered down to levels I'm referring to, we are getting, when you get below 500, you'll begin to have a significant number of what we call issues of domestic violence that cause murder. We have one parish this year where they had a dramatic decline in the last 2025. This year they seem to have gone up a bit, And St. James, in fact, when you look at the extra numbers, 7 of them were the result of domestic conflict. And that meant the numbers in terms of shooting was pretty much down. The mission to accomplish, as we have maybe put in the portfolio piece, but it is a multidisciplinary requirement program, and we have to get to all. It's a whole of government activity, because what you're looking at is almost a cultural shift. How we became like this will take a whole day and a debate. Because, you know, as a rural Jamaican, your days and you have none. Even urban, you know, even urban with the big yard, the grandmother was the center of discipline, and everybody would know. I said in the old proverb, the whole district would raise a child, or the whole yard would raise, because everybody protected the children, and the church was a central part of our social activity. And if you have a dispute, you would go to one of the elders, and if it is that bad, you may even talk to a police sergeant or corporal, not necessarily the station, the school principals, the pastors, etc., were a kind of focus within these communities. Unfortunately, that times have passed, and we find kids not only knocking over each other with shears that can kill, they have knives, they have other weapons, sometimes even a firearm, which may be carrying for someone. We are aware of it. We have done work with the ministries to not only have social workers, case managers, we have trained working members of the working population in psychosocial, psychiatric aids, giving them skills in psychosocial, recognizing emotional activity at the early stage, so we can begin to get them in the system and catch them before they go extreme. But it's work in progress, because cultural change doesn't come by legislation or even by successful apprehension individually. It takes time, changes in our approach to work, and also changes within our own systems, from education to public health to policing.
And 2 more questions to Minister Chang. In terms of the body-worn cameras, we know that they have been procured, but in terms of training the officers to use them, can you give an update on how that's been going so far? And the second question would be, I know not too long ago there was a bit of a row between you and civil society groups based on some comments you had made that they did end up condemning in a joint statement. Have you been in dialogue with any civil society groups since then to try and bridge the gap between the ministry and civil society?
First of all, we don't deploy any of our police equipment until the officers are trained. In fact, there's a whole suite of training activities that have been introduced by the Commissioner in all areas, including social work, but also including in hard policing, so the use of non-lethal weapons, but the use of firearms. So when I say if you engage the police in conflict and they shoot at you, they're not like to miss. We make sure they're trained when they're going on the road. Similarly with cameras, and they're all trained to use them. What I have said, and will repeat, is that the Commissioner have to decide where they're deployed. Research has been done. A lot of what elements of SATECON planned operation. All police operations are planned, right? When we do road traffic checks, it comes under what we call a national coordinated road check system. A big, major operation and a very important operation, because gangs travel between different townships. Montego Bay and Kingston gangs interact. When we do the national road traffic checks, criminals stay home. Reduce murder. It was one of the mechanisms we picked up firearms from cars, because they would send their firearms in innocent-looking cars ahead of them on buses, etc. When we initiate a national road traffic check, what we mean is that every police division simultaneously puts out checks on the road. So you'll drive into Montego, you pass 5 or 6 checks on the road in a squad led by a corporal to check, and it has worked. So those officers, sometimes one will have cameras. On the other hand, we have an operation plan. We're going to visit a difficult area at 3 o'clock in the morning, because you hear some murderer who has killed 12 people is in the community. And he moves around rapid like anyone. The hunted moves faster than the hunted. You know. You can't send an officer in there just with a marked car with lights blaring. They're gone. So you send a special squad in there, they're at risk. They'll be killed if they're not careful. And they can't go with cameras. Cameras will make them a target. They might find somebody, they might find nobody. The police does that all the time. So it has to be the decision of the commissioner of police who wears the camera, where and when. It's part of police equipment, like anything else. So we buy the cameras, we provide them, the police use them. Now, we have an interest as government, and I'm a minister. I've done research on it. Cameras are used in particular by policemen who interface with the public. When you go, if you're going to a dance, there's a huge crowd. If you're on the road, the road checks are important. In our station, the road checks are particularly important. Taximen, well, let me put it this way. When last have you seen a video? Because they used to go viral with a policeman and a taximan fighting. Or a policeman after beating up a taximan. They don't. When the taximan see, or any driver, that's the taxis, because I'm not demonizing the poor taxi guys who are struggling, see a police with a camera and stop a car, they behave themselves. You don't get this string of colorful words and all that is there and what they can do. They show them the license, they go on, and if they have to take a ticket, the police print them a ticket, and there's very little exchange of any kind except a direct. So the commissioner and the officer in charge have to do that. This thing that you must wear a camera when you're going to look for a man who has an M16 that fires 60 rounds per second. It's a crazy idea, right? Policeman, I was a cadet, but that was even my stuff. When your guns start going across your head or over your head, you're going to dive. You're going to find cover, even if you're a policeman, and look for a place where you can find a space to, in fact, return fire. All the research, no research have shown cameras, no research, and you can quote me, that cameras are a valuable piece of tool in special operations of that sort. So SWAT teams in the United States where cameras were brought to use, but it's never part of the routine equipment. The cameras are brought in the LA police, in fact, and they're assigned in particular in the elements of the police should be comparable to our PSTB team, because there were a lot of profiling being done by police officers in the United States, and they put them on cameras with the sound, and they were able to identify and track what was happening when they would stop any driver. And the idea was police officers who had a racist tendency would stop any black driver they see. So it is a judge, a general, or a common worker. And by the use of cameras, they were able to retrain officers and also reduce their tendency to profile and abuse people of color or any other grouping that they didn't like. So the call, I think, at the end was emphasized by one of our partners who did not use cameras. They emphasized in their crisis. But there is a legacy issue that we have where elements of the public assume that those of us who are elected are corrupt. It assumes that those who have authority are corrupt. So the idea is that the police is a corrupt body out there to extort people. It's a wrong legacy. It's incorrect. And I cannot support anything that seeks to reinforce that. And that's what the call for cameras to be used all the time does. Right? We are not objecting to criticism, but it's time we trust our own people and time we respect our own professionals. Our police officers are 14,000. They cannot be perfect. There will be elements in there that will, from the society, they will commit criminal activity as well. But it's a small number. The police was no longer what it was created for. The police was created as a body by the colonial authorities, the employer, big, tall, strong black Jamaican, to protect the properties of the English, the bushers of the day. You recall, until independence, no police officer could go beyond an inspector. There was no gazetted rank for Jamaican because it was not considered that they were good enough, bright enough, and strong enough to be officers. We cannot carry the legacy of that thinking with us. All right? On the other issue, which is, I went off with this. Civil society. No, we're not that different. Civil society is civil society. I'm an elected official. I was a member of Rotary Club before, got elected. That's civil society. We have a gap. There's a difference. Not a matter of gap or contention. They have a role to play, but I think they have to play it responsible. And if they fail to do so, I'll say so. And I say their persistence of making judgment calls on police officers in difficult situations before there is a proper investigation is wrong. I've said it yesterday, it is immoral, and it is undermining of police in difficult situations, and it put police officers at risk. And that is my concern. I will repeat what I said. I recruit officers from difficult areas. In fact, we get a lot of officers from challenged communities, because it's still true, our students from working class families, especially young men, who cannot afford to go to college, university, you're aware, even teachers' college can be expensive. It is free, easy to join the police force. And many see it, especially before we were able to do a little better for them in their working condition and compensation, as the best route to get to improve your base in terms of going to police, take time, study. And we have seen lawyers, business elements, actuarial scientists come out of the police force, because they would join the force, they get a salary, and they go to evening class until they can get first degree and continue and get scholarship and grow. We still have those facilities. We think by creating a better environment, we retain more police. In fact, last year we had the lowest resignation. Am I right, Deputy? One of the lowest levels, although we have more police officers. So I cannot have anyone, whether they are half pastors, deacons in, half color pastors and civil society people who have a big platform, to jump up and say policemen are shooting people irresponsible. No, I'm not going to accept that. It's wrong. And I'm not going to accept it. They are free to comment, because if the police misbehave, and if they conduct themselves in the wrong manner, the society must provide a voice. But we also have, as a country, some of the most robust oversight bodies. But we keep wanting to have more and more oversight. In fact, we are preoccupied with oversight rather than results. I want results. And I could be inclined to give leverage because of the results. And that's why Indicom and other civil society groups exist. When my constituent, a retired gentleman who is a good tradesman, he's running like a sidewalk shop, is crying on my literally before me. His daughter have to take up outsourcing work, which takes off at 1 o'clock. And he tell me he needs the police in Norwood. Why? Because his daughter, when she leave work 1 o'clock, she can't come home, so she has to find some place, sleep downtown in one of them 2-hour brothel. That's what he's faced. And you're going to tell me, no, I must go. I have to argue with the police who is going to take the criminal out of Norwood, who will rape his daughter and shoot her. It's just not consistent. They are free to investigate. Indicom got a budget last year, what? I gave an additional over $200 million in the budget. They are given a full budget. They have investigators, and they have the training. And as I said before, look, the Indicom man has the shooter, the policeman himself. He have the gun, he have the bullet, he have the victim, and the crime scene supremacy. Policemen find a dead man on the road out there, so have to find and solve the murder. They must go do the work. If they convict the police officer, they're free to comment. They have no right to comment on the work of the police before they have the evidence. And as I indicated, prosecution rate is less than 5%. We need civil society and the institution that we have designed to do their job and do it fairly and squarely. Not a difference, just a fact. Yes, sir.
All right.
Morning, Minister. Morning, everyone. Liver and Barrett, the Gleaner Company.
Mr. Barrett, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Minister.
I know you're here because DPM is here.
Could be.
Some trouble.
I have 3 questions.
All right.
2 for Mr. Deputy Commissioner Clark. And the questions for Deputy Commissioner Clark, Minister, I wanted to hear your views on those questions also.
Yes.
And then one for you, Minister.
Sure.
Yeah,
in your...
Oh, Mr. Clark, directly, we will see what the questions are.
Okay. In your presentation in Parliament yesterday,
Mr.
Minister,
Clark is a
you...
professional police officer. I'm the politician.
No. And my questions are operations related, not necessarily policy.
No, but it's a press briefing by the government.
Okay. In your presentation in Parliament yesterday, Minister, you indicated that you'll be bringing new amendments to the Firearms Act to Parliament soon. Can you indicate, Minister, what those amendments are and what you hope to achieve with those amendments? That's one.
All right.
And then the fact that guns made their way into the Big Wall Carnival after party, I wanted to know, one, if there was a breach of the permit that was issued to the promoters, one, and two, how does that incident inform the issuing of permits going forward? And then finally, the commissioner said to us here at the post-cabinet press conference that the police will not, or they are not going to ticket motorists whose vehicle come with the daytime running lights and or the fog lamps. We're still seeing motorists being ticketed for those accessories on their vehicles.
All right.
I want to understand, where is the disconnect, why this is still happening?
Yeah, let me start at the beginning. First of all, we're not looking any great additional benefits in the Firearms Act. The Firearms Act was passed through Parliament, a joint select committee, and everybody, the public was out to participate. We had several presentations by the public, Norman Mellon Law School included, individuals from across. It was quite an intensive joint select committee. I chaired it, and the opposition, of course, plays an active role in joint select committees. But like everything else, legislation is drafted by the drafters and by the policy guidelines we issue, and sometimes circumstances change quite dramatically, right? And you have to go back and revise the law. There are a couple of things in there we have to change, and that's what we're doing with the revision. It's not a major change. The primary ones, of course, the issue raised with there are two issues raised with toy gun firearms. One was that the toy gun got the same penalty, especially even if it's not being used in a felon. It's interesting. When it was being debated in Parliament, and at that time it was still early days, and the murder rate was still running over 4,500,000. I think if we had to lock a man for trying to cut a toy gun out of paper, everybody was saying yes. That was the reality of the day. The mood was anything that looked like a gun must be out of space. That was the mood then. And Parliament didn't spend as much time looking at it. I think there was a little bit of oversight in moving the toy gun into bringing it under category Section 5 of the law. And we'll have to do, I can do the research and give you a full answer, but that is really one of the primary things. And the Prime Minister asked for it to be changed because some lawyers start making a big fuss about it. And maybe for good reason. We had already started the process. I mean, the review of the data show that we started to get systematic decline in homicides from about 2022, coming down. 2022. In the earlier years, it was us. In the earlier years, when we had declined, it was after a state of public emergencies. But I think we had begun to reach a tipping point in terms of the effectiveness of the police and other activities. So that's where we start. And that was a challenge, and we're going to make the amendments. We went through fairly quickly, and it's a big bill, and there are no other things there to tidy up. It is a tidying up operation, and we will have that in the House in this quarter in terms of that. The regulations governing the Firearms Act also being done, and that's to ensure that the legislature is complete and holistic. So it's not anything too dramatic, my good friend. The other issues I'll the Commissioner comment, but before I do, there's a policy. You have to the events there, they're not so much a policy governing the permitting. The police don't, the permit to have an activity is granted by the local authority. We don't dispute that. But the police have to examine every gathering of citizens for safety, whether it is even if it's a church gathering, you know. Once you have thousands of people come together, the police have a responsibility to see that it does not disrupt normal life. So you examine it for traffic congestion and, in this case, risk of that. And there was a practice pursued, and I let the community know that big organizer of big entertainment activity would engage the FLA to bring their armored vehicle and would engage a number of police officers to be there, collect licensed firearms. And they themselves would have somebody search with the required equipment that when people come in, they couldn't bring unlicensed firearm. I think we're already getting a bit relaxed because the murder rate is where it is. That's all that's happening. And we just have to tighten up again. Bear in mind, and why I take the question before I ask to comment, when we say permit may be issued by the parish owners, but you cannot have this dance, everybody make nice. Because it's a big economic activity and the police is being hard and the person is being unfair, and it is because not their friend, they won't give them license permit. When in fact we will have other intelligence. You know, police are aware that producer over there is linked with a particular gentleman who has money, but he is calling with another gentleman over there. And the gentleman over there going to say, well, if he's having a dance, I don't want him to have one. I'm going to shoot up the dance and make sure when my dance come on, I protect it. That kind of thing happens, and the police get information and say, well, you can't have a dance here. As well as, so, you know, any activity that an entertainment activity can be used to cover criminal activity, whether it's rinsing money, whether it is allowing for expansion of conflict, whether it is just a location that will create congestion, and in just a public order, the police have the right to interface. Nice, we have the right to interface. So that is how the police gets in the mix. We don't grant permits, but we will examine the circumstances to see if it will create public disorder or public harm. And that's what it is. I don't know if Commissioner wishes to say anything more.
Deputy Commissioner?
That was
I think on the carnival and the ticketing, daytime lights and the fog lamps.
Well, I don't know, I would put it on the spot. It's in the law, and until you amend the law, I think the police may have to use discretion. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Minister. We have given directions for us to exercise some discretion where daytime running lights are concerned. I'm not aware that people are continuing to be ticketed. I'll look into it. But as far as our instructions are concerned, I'm not sure that they are being breached.
All right.
The Commissioner said he'll give them a break, but not every officer necessarily at the time. But the law allows them to do it.
The question is, that the Commissioner had indicated that you are pointing to an issue of discretion. The Commissioner had said to us here that instructions were given that where the vehicle comes fitted with the daytime running light or the fog lamps, not the ones that people install, the ones that come fitted on the vehicle, that they would not be prosecuted. And that's what we're still seeing.
Okay, so fortunately, the Commissioner, we are not able to change the law. The law has to be changed in Parliament. So when we issue instructions, or policies based on discretion. Until the law is passed, then that's it. Thank you.
All right. We have one more question.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My question is to Senator Morris Dixon. My name is Rajay Bennett from the Umona Guild. In light of a possible demographic or population crisis brought on by our decreased national birth rate, what policies, programs, or projects are being explored to address the key insecurities of Jamaican youth, young professionals in particular, such as job and housing security, to incentivize a population growth?
Incentivize too.
Population growth. I know Minister Tufton has been talking about people doing things in order to have more babies. But I think it's a problem that we've seen, not just in Jamaica, it's in many other countries that we see this phenomenon of the declining birth rate. And in Jamaica, one of the key things for us is our policy towards youth. It's a very important part of our policy. You're here at a post-cabinet press briefing with your Deputy Prime Minister right here, and you're able to stand up and ask questions. We're really actively working to improve the status of our young people in Jamaica through things like this, through issuing more scholarships and our support to our tertiary institutions. And then I know you are very aware, for example, what we've done recently through your work and UTech Student Council's work in developing the new LEAP program, where you can earn while you're learning at university. And we're very excited about working with you on that. What we're saying to our young people is that we're really about empowering you and giving you the tools so that you can help with economic growth. Because a lot of young people, when you talk to them, they say, I want to own a home. I want to have a nice life here in Jamaica. And that's what we're trying to do. So when the DPM is here speaking to you about the work of the police force and crime reduction, we know that one of the things that stymied growth in Jamaica and has made young people want to leave is the crime problem. So when he's fixing that, that's very much a part of us making Jamaica conducive for young people to want to stay. It also raises the GDP of the country, which ultimately means higher salaries for you eventually, and as you are getting higher education, there are more and more jobs available to you. When we talk about NARA yesterday in Parliament, it's again about creating an environment where young people can feel happy to be here in Jamaica. These legislations, and that's why I have you here every week, so you can go and evangelize to your other young friends on campus. We are trying to build a different Jamaica. I tell you, when I left UWI, I left with a wonderful cohort of brilliant people. From my year that left, there are very few of us here in Jamaica. They all left. Our goal, this administration's goal, is to fix the problems in Jamaica that led to that outward migration. And NARA, like yesterday, what's that about? It's about not just rebuilding the West. We have to rebuild it, but we need to make it even better than it was before. And then it's also saying every year we underspend on capital because of the bureaucracy. Let's really give it a fighting chance over the next few years to get lots of development projects happening so that we can transform Jamaica in a big way. So young people, you have to look at these things, look at these pieces of legislation, look at what it means for you and your future and what it is we are trying to build in Jamaica. So when you talk about the declining birth rate, a lot of young people say, I don't want to have children, it's expensive and all of that, and I want them to grow up in a particular environment. So what we as government have to do, we have to fix the problems, the crime problems, the underemployment. Some people leave and not getting jobs at the levels they would want it to be. That's a reality, and we're working on that. And we do that through getting the investments happening in this country. And then, of course, you have all of the other social elements that we have to put in place. But in terms of housing, remember that we had a policy young people and the NHT reserving homes for them. We've increased it. We've increased the percentage of homes that have to go to young people like you. And then we've not just stopped there. Remember to tell every young person that we now have a $2 million option for you to use and access to help you with your down payment. $2 million from your government. So there are many things we're doing, and that's why you come here so you can talk to me, advise DPM, advise the government on what we should do. So many things in our manifesto came directly from our university students. So we're listening to you. We don't say we have it perfect, and we want to hear more from you. We've invested a lot of money in you. You are the ones that got the best of our education product in Jamaica. And we're expecting you to help us by saying, from all of this learning, how we can make Jamaica the country that you want to raise your children in. All right. All right. So you want to answer to DPM, please?
If I interfere a little bit, it's good to hear a member of the university student body, Gilda, I assume.
Yes.
And what I think advice do, that besides saying to Minister, what can we do?
What do you want to do?
It is, you're at the stage where your mind is supposed to be most creative. Oftentimes reflecting a little bit of rebellion, and nothing wrong with that. I was guild president at one stage. But it's also good for you to look at the issue on a broader scale. Your leadership should understand you can study the issue of declining population in Jamaica, why it happened, because it happened for a good reason. When it was a problem, they said, Dr. Lemare's too is better than too many. Was considered a world-leading program and adopted by others who couldn't get it done properly, and especially he was in fact a Catholic, so just at the whole cross-section of society accepted it. Now it has led to a stage where we feel we don't have enough. But is that a fact? Have you examined it? Our population, the productivity levels, what needs to be done to see that we can optimize the opportunities for those who are here to really generate more economic activity? You have a lot of questions that can be answered, and it's a good place to do them, is while you're still a student. And still more costly than I was there, but I had a scholarship, unfortunately. But it's still very costly, but it's opportunity that offers up for studying. We have 700,000 people who are not in the labor market. Why are they not there? What can be done to bring them in? And you might find that we have more than enough. We need more. We have more than enough jobs for those available. They're just not capable of the labor market. So it is a good question to ask, but I think it's a good opportunity to apply your minds across the various faculties and do some work that you can present some hard, cold facts and good analysis that what we need to do now as a country that will prevent the impact of what we see as a, in brackets, declining labor force. Right? So,
DPM,
and I'm sure your minister will help you, though.
And we already are doing it. DPM, I wanted the UTEC student union team to stand because they've done a lot of work, DPM. They actually write policy position papers and send to me. They've done one on outward migration, how to keep young people here. They also helped us in terms of our employment program for young people in university. They've also sent through comments on the Jamaica Teaching Council bill, and they're doing some other things. And what they do is they do it interdisciplinary. So they get the students in the law program and in other programs, they bring them together, and they actually write papers to me. And so I encourage you and I thank you for that. And that's the kind of work that the Deputy Prime Minister is saying is necessary. Don't just look at the problems and say, government, what you're doing, which you're doing quite well at. You're actually sitting down and coming up with solutions. And you've seen for yourself, you found it now in policy. And so I want to thank you, too, for your work. They're doing good things, DPM.
Challenge the traditions.
Yes.
And I'm embracing those who are with here. That's why I speak of legacy issues. Right. We're a colonial country. We are ex-slave society. There are a lot of things that we say we accept as normal, which need to be changed. Right. We have had at least one politician to challenge a lot of social values, and it was good to do so. There was a lot of political excitement in campus in those early days. But we have not sat down and thought out what I call the Jamaican value system that is for stability, development, and social order. In other words, we still accept a lot of the colonial values as important, and therefore you stay with them, rather than look, what do we need to amend this to ensure justice, but is a Jamaican flavor, right? Yes. That's why I said that earlier, we tend to have, a lot of the time we tend to disrespect our own.
Yeah, we do.
When we get authority, we abuse it because we carry it subliminally that Jamaicans, A, cannot exercise authority properly, or B, that if, you can, you disregard those who, you exercise with a certain level of coercion, which is not necessary. It requires while you're at the stage you're at, when your mind is still unbruised by the various challenges outside the society, just do what you have to do to raise some challenging questions. We're not going to accept all of them, but we won't in this society, but bring some come. Minister Morris is green at this time, so you'll find a very ready recipient for new ideas and new things. Then she will have to argue with me, what can we do and why we don't get it done, trying to get through. But she's very receptive to new ideas, and I enjoy seeing young minds challenge some fixed traditions that need to be changed.
Yes,
good to have you here. Thank you,
and
Minister.
And I need to acknowledge the Youth Advisory Council reps who are here. Can you stand? They are advisors to me. I've been working to put them on boards so that they get board experience also, and they can also advise on how we can make Jamaica even more receptive for young people. So thank you for being here too. Thank you. All right. Well, I hear there are no more questions, DPM.
Thank
and
you.
So as we close out, I know you remember this, DPM. Today's Administrative Professionals Day. And I know all the time, all the credit usually goes to those at the top of organizations, but no organization functions without our admin professionals. And so we want to say a happy Administrative Professionals Day to everyone who works in this area, and just reaffirming that you are a part of the success of any organization, and especially in government. We could not be talking about all this success without you and the work that you do. And so as we end today, as always, I pray that God will continue to bless this wonderful country that we call Jamaica, land we love. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you, DP.